it. So I love that it is so close to my heart. So yeah.
It's time, isn't it?
It really is.
Should we wait in silence or? There we go.
Okay, I think we're going to give it another 30 seconds for people to come in, and then we will start. I'll stop sharing and come back in. Come into the session chat. I can see people are joining, which is excellent. Okay. Welcome, everybody. Thank you, everyone, for joining us for this panel on team optimization in a down economy. My name is Mark Green. I'm the Director of Pre-Sales and Buyer Enablement here at Consensus, and I will be your moderator for today's session. DEMOFEST is presented by Consensus. Consensus is an intelligent demo automation software that helps scale pre-sales with tours and interactive video demos. You can learn more at goconsensus.com or view the automated micro demo in the link in the Docs tab to the right of your screen, where you'll find me again, showing you around what we do, why we do, and a demo of the software. We're very proud to provide this event for free to all attendees. However, we would like to invite each of you to donate to our company's humanitarian organizations if you would like to. You can learn more about this and donate by visiting the DEMOFEST Gives Back booth in our virtual expo hall in the Booths tab, or in the link in the Docs tab on the right of your screen. We also invite you to join us in our DEMOFEST community on Discord. This is your community where you can connect with speakers, get exclusive access to content and events, and continue the conversation with attendees and people across the industry. Long after this DEMOFEST event has ended, you'll be able to connect with these people and chat about anything you like. You can join your community peers using the @ link in the Docs tab. We encourage you to participate in today's session. On the right-hand side of your console, you can see a few ways you can engage with us throughout the session. The chat function will allow you to engage with us as well as other attendees. Throughout the session, you may see a few polls. We encourage you to participate as your feedback is very important to us. Our speaker will be taking questions from the audience at the end of the session, but we encourage you to ask questions at any time through the Q&A box. And if at any time you are having technical difficulties, head to the gear icon at the bottom of your screen. Here you will see a help document to troubleshoot common issues. And now, I would like to briefly introduce our panelists today. We have with us Zach Lawryk, who may join us in a moment, Head of Solutions Consulting at Rippling, Malcolm Murphy, Sales Engineering Director at Mimecast, Natasja Bax, Founder and Trainer and Coach at the DemoScene, and Art Fromm, Owner and Founder of Team Sales Development Inc. So, over to all of you. Wonderful to have you on. Certainly, I know, Malcolm, you've got 3 areas to focus on when you're planning to foster success during times of economical hardship. What things can leaders do to increase the visibility of the value that pre-sales brings to their organization?
Yeah, thanks, Mark. I think that's potentially an important area is making sure that the work the teams are doing is being recognized. So I think when times are tough, as a leader, it's important that you're more visible, both to your people, but then also throughout the organization. And I don't want to, what comes to mind is the quote, what have the Romans done for us lately? Which people get the movie reference, you'll know what I'm talking about. but it's making sure that whether it's obviously we support sales, obviously we're supporting sales, and the salespeople, sales organization knows what we're doing. But in an environment where the sales cycles are a little longer or the win rates are a little less strong, then get around the rest of the organization. Don't just be doing the mid-funnel stuff. Can we be doing stuff top of funnel? Can we be doing stuff later on? Can we be working with marketing or customer success or elsewhere in the organization? And as a leader, can you be making sure that your people are doing those things, but also the organization is seeing that we're doing those things?
Well, Natasja, Art, Zach, what do you think about that? Do you agree? You're allowed to agree and disagree, or both at different times.
I think it's important to keep the morale up. There's times when a down economy is that when there's too much work because your team is too small and you have to step up for each other. Then everybody's overloaded. How do you take care of the team then? But the opposite is when there's not enough opportunities, and then is when collaborating with other teams is very, very important. Sales will be asking for a lot of support for the limited opportunities that they have, but some of these opportunities might not be leading to success, might be dead ends. So you don't want your team to work on all these opportunities leading to nowhere. That's not good for the morale. And then working together with other teams, as Malcolm points out, that's a really powerful way to keep the spirit up, to see what good things your team is doing. So when there is tougher times, and it is about people that might need to be teams that might need to reduce, then your team has proven value to the other departments, not only the sales, but the product management or the marketing.
Proving value to your team by pre-sales metrics is obviously very important. If your leader is part of that pre-sales world, what advice, perhaps Zach or Art, have you got for proving that value to people who don't move in that pre-sales world? Perhaps they're in a slightly separate part of the organization, but people roll up to them.
So one thing also to set the stage, and Peter put it in the chat there. By the way, if everybody that's on here could just say real quick maybe where you're from and what your job title is, that would be helpful for us as well to see who's here. And then you could definitely put some things in the Q&A, because this isn't just us discussing our ideas. We want to hear what things you want to know as well, or your observations. So please feel free to use those tools, as Mark pointed out at the beginning. I think that it's a function of, to Natasja's point, what is it like for you right now in a down economy? And I think you could have two different extremes. One could be really, really busy because your team has been cut back and now you're having to do a lot more with less people. And on the other hand, it could be that your customers are starting to buckle down a little bit and delay projects or other things like that. So all of a sudden the workload has fallen off. And it is one thing we can do in the background, especially as leaders, so many sales leaders that are on here, is continue to show the importance and the value of pre-sales during this time. So either how much the team is performing because there's not enough people to go around, and as a pre-sales leader, what you could do to show their value to management, so that the company knows the importance of it, and of course to the sales team. And then if you are at a slow point in time, what you could do to maintain your team so that the company doesn't start cutting them unnecessarily. And that's where some of the suggestions that have already been mentioned by Malcolm and by Natasja are really good, in terms of retooling and focusing on how you can work together better. One of my big focuses is team sales development. So it's really about the way the team can work together. I think one of the ways you could prove your value to your most important internal customer, your salesperson, is just sit down with them, maybe if it is a bit slow, and talk about what is our strategy, or would there be a particular vertical or a particular, type of customer we would want to go and try to pursue, and have a maybe more targeted approach, but be the partner with your salesperson so that they do see your value. And when you're bringing that value to them, they're going to benefit from it. And then the rest of the organization will see it as well. So those are a few initial thoughts, Mark.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Zach, what do you think?
I think this is a perfect opportunity to bring the team along, regardless of the size of your team, to sort of recalibrate and reorient around what your company goals are. And that's, I think, in my opinion, the best way to highlight the value of the sales engineering solutions consulting function, broadly speaking, is to think at a high level, like what are the company's goals and objectives, how have they changed, given the current macroeconomic climate, and then how can the SE function fit in and help us execute against these sort of newly branded goals. And I think, regardless of, your company's shape or size, everybody has a OKR, V2 MOM or equivalent. I really like to orient around that and then have that sort of trickle down to even the individual level to say, what are you going to do? How are you going to change your approach? And what are you going to do to add value to this new world? And that just makes it a lot easier to ratchet up to things that everybody knows, understands, and cares about. And I think we're all here because the SE function can have an impact on a lot of the things that are really critical right now, especially as it relates to engaging customers in new ways. So that's what we've done at Rippling as well, is just really tried to reorient everybody around what matters to the company overall, and make sure everybody has an individual plan for that.
Yeah, just real quick, Zach, I agree. Not only can pre-sales have, but absolutely does. And in many ways, we could be the glue that holds us all together through this time, because we've got, as Lori mentioned earlier on the keynote, SEs are the one with the staying power. And if there's anybody that's going to come in and out, it's most likely the salespeople. So I totally agree with that. Use this as an opportunity to refocus everybody on what those goals are. And we are the big enabler of that. John Carroll likes to say that pre-sales is the oil of sales, that keeps things running. So it's a very important point.
But it's also about prioritization, isn't it? Because people are drawn into different types of activities, and collaboration with sales is one, but keeping an eye on the corporate objectives. That means you, as a pre-sales leader, need to qualify what and to prioritize the work you would like your team to do. Define a list of the top must-win accounts and make sure that someone is available. If there is that must-win opportunity, that there is someone that can take the lead, that the right person is available to take the lead and is not working with some other activity of another team that might not be that strategic, but that person just came first.
Yeah.
Or have some kind of service level agreement where some of the segments where it says how quickly you can support them, qualify the opportunities, qualify segments that you focus on more than others because they need that revenue, perhaps more than one of the industries that is more that's in a better condition, climate, better economic climate.
100% agree. I think on that point too, I think we're diving right in, right? What is this, an hour long, 30 minutes long? How much time do we have?
It's not going to be enough, basically.
Okay, we can talk for that.
So watch out for DemoFest 2024 with like 6-hour long sessions.
Yeah, we're recording this session. I hope we don't use this for any snippet because I have a call actually in a couple hours, on this topic. Like this is a real application of what Natasja is mentioning is. I think, like, given these times, we all come from an era where we had really luxurious SE to AE ratios, and there wasn't much scrutiny put on, the science behind those ratios. And what I'm having to do, like segment by segment, country by country we support, is to say we don't have resources to cover every opportunity. That's just the truth of this is the reality of the world today. And so we have to, and again, like segment by segment, have a conversation with the sales leaders to say, here you have X resources. This is where we excel as it relates to supporting your business. How do you want to cooperate, negotiate with me to determine where we should deploy those resources in the most effective manner possible? So that could be like laying down some additional qualification criteria or establishing, thresholds either on a by employee count or complexity. There's a lot of different ways you could look at that. But I think you really have to get specific about where your team excels and where you can secure the most revenue. And to the most granular extent that you have time or the mental capacity to think that through.
Malcolm.
Yeah, I think if we just come back, I'm going to come back to Peter's question from the chat, actually, because I think this would be useful to frame things. When, so what does a down economy mean? It means there's less money about, right? It means there's fewer prospects and customers, and they're less willing to spend money, or they've got more requirements before they make that decision. And we can remind ourselves it's useful for us as sales engineering then to think about, okay, what impact does this have on the sales organization? And not we can talk about, and it is important to remember the OKRs and to remember the company perspective and the conversation that we've just had there. But it's also, I think, useful to think about the personal impact and what's it like to be a seller in this world where there's fewer leads of lower quality that are, and the targets, my target remains the same. The imperative for me to go and acquire customers and to generate revenue exists. So that puts our sales colleagues under a lot of pressure, and that does in my observation, it can encourage people to try a little bit of chaotic behavior, a little bit of sometimes desperate behavior. And I think something Natasja was saying about qualification there, I sometimes, as a sales engineering leader, I'll dial back a little bit from my normal view on qualification, and I'll take a few Hail Marys and I'll take a few desperation shots, because that's what the individuals in the field need. Sometimes the right thing for the people is to be a little less discriminating. Sometimes it's the wrong thing, but just something to think about in the mix is this down economy puts a lot of pressure on our people, and we need to maybe flex or adapt or change some of our procedures or processes or view of the world to accommodate that extra pressure.
Yeah, in fact, Malcolm, and then building on what Zach said as well, as far as justifying or figuring out what's the right mix, and then what do you do? I think that a very interesting thing would be, and again, this is maybe for managers, but even as individual contributors, there could be an opportunity here for potentially some cross-pollination in terms of which group is it in the company that does need help right now. Like if it's customer support, for example, what if you loan yourself out for a little while, assuming that we're in the situation of there's not enough work and there's the potential for the team size needing to be downsized. And as you mentioned, Zach, in terms of redeploying potentially other areas, where could there be a place in the company that needs help, whether it's marketing on the front end, whether it's implementation, or post sales on the back end? That's an excellent opportunity to get some other experiences, to your point, Malcolm, and do something a little chaotic out of the box, because we all know that the best SEs, and really in life, the more experiences we have, the better we are tuned. Now, what I would do as the manager, as I would say, okay, this is like temporary. You could have this SE for 6 months or something like that, but I want them back when things start to happen. And now they've got that help of supporting another group, as well as developing that additional insight.
That I think you said something there that I need to remind myself every day, but it's important that we as remind other people, look, this will pass. So you can tell from the hair, this is not my first down economy, right? So I know globally we're off the back of a 10, 13 year run of free money and everything's good and so on and so forth. But there was 2008, there was .com. In the UK, there was 1992. These things happen in cycles. We will get out of the other side. And I'm reminded, as Art, as you were speaking there, of something that we did at a previous company with sales engineering. It was a very tactical response to the downturn, right? Which was, we had some of our sales engineers go do professional services consultancy, right? We exchanged them for fee-paying work. Okay. What that meant was when we came out of the other side, they were suddenly so much better at doing the pre-sales work for the fee-paying work. And so it was adding skills, adding capacity. They understood a little bit more about how our technology worked to the great understanding they already had. So it's important to remember we will get through this. And the two questions there are, what does my organization need when we are the other side of this? And how do I keep my people focused? How do I keep their time horizon on what it looks like? Yes, it's painful right now, but it's not going to be like this for the next 20 years. So keep your eyes on the future state and the light at the end of the tunnel.
Zach, it looked like you were keen to jump in there.
I was just crossing my fingers.
Well, I mean, it is a good tactic. We all like that. I would say it's really interesting about this training. One thing that stuck with me for many years is John Kerr's rope score. And many people have probably met the rope score. It's return on pre-sales effort. Because I had a pre-sales leader ask me, okay, thinking about what you're saying, Zach, about ratios, what ratio am I going to be able to achieve if we make this change? And I think it was really poignant that a ratio is perhaps less important these days than actually understanding the effort that the same amount of people can do as what they do changes and adapts and flows, especially in a down economy. So what do you think about that?
I think that is critically important. I think we have to think beyond the ratio. We've all been there, and I've been a couple different jobs where I was just given a ratio to hire against, and it worked out, and I didn't have to think any further. I think what's different about this downturn is that the entire business is more deliberate about how they're deploying resources across the board, and I think it's healthy for SE leaders like ourselves to think more deliberately about the type of activities we're engaging in to contribute to something like that return on effort. Like, you have to really think like activity by activity across the team, where we're spending our time and how you would measure the impact of that time spent. And it's not easy to do for an overlay function. And this is a potentially controversial statement, but like frankly, the easiest way to measure the impact of an SE function is to pull it out altogether and see what happens. But obviously that's not something we can do. But it's challenging to measure an overlay. It's kind of viewed as like, if you think about your average like RevOps function, they're thinking about the SE function as a tool for the salespeople to use to execute against their quota. And so for us to be better about the metrics we measure the organization against in a real meaningful way that would stand up to a CFO, that's a super healthy exercise for everyone involved. And to challenge yourself to go through that exercise, anybody would come out better because of it. Or as a result
the outcome can also guide towards doing more automation, because there's a lot of manual work done by pre-sales people that just take a lot of time, which can be automated to become more efficient. The thing is, where do you get the money to automate parts, the RFP process, or some of the early demos, as Consensus can help everybody with. So that's a way that can be a result of measuring what is the impact of that people are making, what's the impact that the team is making, what are the results they're getting with the activities they're doing.
So when they're measuring it, then Natasja, if they do get farmed out temporarily to other places, either for value-added places in professional services, whether it's for training themselves, so that they're spending time making themselves better, how then would you suggest people can justify when there's hardship in the sales teams are going to be really pushing for more and more demos, more and more meetings, more and more, every single lead they're going to try to love. When they see the SC teams being put into other places, which is perhaps a realistic option, how do you suggest that leaders trying to make that happen handle the political pressure from their leadership colleagues? Because I think people have usually just seen pre-sales as a thing they can use, and suddenly we're starting to do things on our own. And I think, I mean, we always were, but
is that actually? I'm well. Is that surprised? But is that actually happening that we see pre-sales teams or pre-sales individuals landed to other teams like customer, like the support or the? Is that happening? Because in my opinion, over the last 2-3 years, pre-sales has gained a much better. It's been a better brand. It's a job. It's a job that not everybody can do. And just putting those people into post-sales, is that something that is actually happening?
What does the
what I would just offer up is that what we're talking about is ideas for how to do things in a down economy. And if it's the choice between laying off somebody, and you're right, I would hope that pre-sales would be a more protected class, but as opposed to a professional services person who's generating billable revenue, and somebody else who might be seen as, not that we're not important, of course we are, but it's just an option. So I think it's, rather than lay somebody off, if you've got too many people and you are being asked as a manager to thin them out. I know many years ago when I started, I was an engineer and they were going through some layoffs, and myself and like 4 other new engineers were seen as up and coming, basically, probably because we were cheaper than the engineers that were there. So they were doing these layoffs, and they took a bunch of us and they put us on night shift doing process and instrumentation diagrams on a CAD system to sort of hide us and get us out of the limelight. Now, again, I would agree with you, Natasja. I would hope pre-sales is prominent enough that wouldn't happen. But in case it is, also, it just might be a chance to if things are a little slower, for people to do the different roles. It's like Southwest Airlines, right? Aren't they the ones that everybody does every job, and therefore they're a little bit more familiar with all the different things that go on? So that was my only suggestion. I don't think it's, some kind of panacea, just an option.
No, it resonates with the chat. I see people in the chat typing that in. So it is happening. It is still happening. Yeah, obviously.
Yeah, and I think, go ahead, please.
I was just going to say, I agree. I think that makes logical sense. I would just challenge leaders that are in a similar position to think more directly how they can impact sales metrics if that's their primary function. Because I think we all know, and that's why we're here, we have modern technology that is capable of impacting sales metrics in new and perhaps innovative ways. And I think SEs can fit into those sales metrics. So I would hope that, like, in the order of operations, it's first, where are we deployed? Can we be deployed more effectively? Second, are there new and innovative ways that we can impact sales metrics, such as pipeline development, top of the funnel support to accelerate the sales cycle? And then maybe third is, like, are there other areas in the company where we can deploy and benefit from the skills on the team? But I think, like, for example, something like Consensus, you're creating videos to impact and generate pipeline can be a huge value add and a scale function that the SE organization can help drive. It's easier said than done to create a bunch of videos, just in transparency, but we're trying to do that at Rippling, and it's having great early returns to work with our sales development leaders. And that's somebody that I typically, historically did not work very closely with, but now we're thinking about new and exciting ways for SEs to influence pipeline. And I think there's a lot to be done there.
Malcolm, you had a thought?
Yeah, I was just, again, Natasja referenced the chat that's going on there, and I was thinking the question that's in there about customer success, working with customer success and protecting existing revenue versus working on new revenue. And I wanted to move on to that. And I'm going to pronounce an opinion here, which is, I think sales engineering should be working on new revenue. Now, the nuances and the organization obviously needs to protect the install base, and you need a net revenue retention rate. You need to grow the size of the snowball, absolutely. But sales engineering is a sales function, and selling is about new revenue, not protecting existing revenue. Now, I know the reality is different for a lot of people, a lot of organizations, myself included. So we do need to possibly compromise that every now and then. But as a general principle, I like new revenue.
Yeah, and I agree on that. And that's why things like sitting down with your sales counterpart or your manager or together in teams or small groups, brainstorm where is the sweet spot for new revenue, given that the economy is different right now. What is different about your customers? What is different about the makeup of the market? And I know that's a marketing function, but you know what? We have feet on the street. We've got great insights to what's going on. And this is another area where pre-sales can be of great value. And then again, the teaming aspect can come into play, because now you're brainstorming together. What are we seeing? What do we think we should go? Should we do? And then where can we go after that? I think that even doing some, and I recently saw something about this on one of the chat boards or something, doing the win-loss analysis, just spend an hour going over a recent loss or where something got stalled, or in the new economy, what's not working that used to work, and determine as a team, what is it we could do together? What's the things that we need to do differently? Maybe we do put something more like consensus up front to drive more of those leads, to generate more revenue, ways that we can, change our focus. But having those win-loss reviews, I think now would be a really good time to do it. Sometimes there's a thought that when things are going well, we don't need to do them because, look at all the things we're winning. Well, we've got a little downtime. Let's sit back and think about what's different and where do we see deals be installed.
Yeah, I think it's really valuable. I'm loving the chat. By the way, thank you everyone for diving into there. If you're not using it, make sure you do. We've got a question in the Q&A that we will come to. What's really interesting is that I'm seeing people using. So I agree with you, Malcolm, that people don't necessarily want to be shifted away from pre-sales activities and be used for perhaps expansion, but those buyers are going to have traveled through a really great pre-sales journey on their entry into the company. When they want to expand and go through that learning, I think they should receive similar styles of activities. So if there's a way for pre-sales to impact those existing customers' new sales as well, I think there's a way to do both. I'm obviously a little biased, but we are seeing people doing post-sale stuff as well, but not placing those people in those post-sale roles, but having the content that's created in the pre-sale roles being used in post-sale roles as well.
Mm-hmm.
I did want to make sure that we get to the Q&A, but Natasja, you comment first, and then we'll.
Yeah, isn't there something in between? I mean, we can focus on new revenue, but let's say you've sold to one part of the company, but your tooling could be interesting for another part of the company. That is something that is worthwhile in spending some pre-sales time on. It's not per se post-sales. It's expanding the customer base, and that might be easier these days than only focusing on the net new names, because those people you don't know, they are scared to spend any money. They don't see the value that you can bring within an existing customer. If you expand in the region, or you expand your tooling, you go to another module or whatsoever, you've already established the credibility. So I believe it is important to have an eye on that from a pre-sales perspective, and not only focus on the net new names.
Oh, completely agree with that, Natasja. I think when I talk about new revenue, I think new revenue from an existing customer absolutely falls in that box. And one of the things that massively has frustrated me over my career is when you see someone say, and I'm going to pick Nestle because they are the largest company in Europe, right? Someone says, hey, we've got Nestle. And what they mean is, hey, I've got a $10,000 order from Nestle. Well, I'm prepared to bet that if you could sell $10,000 worth of product to Nestle, There's a different bit of Nestle that you can sell another $10,000 worth of product or service to. And that's another sales cycle. It's another person. Yes, it's a little bit easier because you're already on their transaction system. It's a little bit easier because you have an internal reference. So that's another sales cycle. That's new revenue. Just happens to be a logo that you already own. But I think that's an underexploited area for a lot of people that I have worked with or speak to.
And I think it's a both and. I mean, we're just brainstorming here, so I think all these, it's very situational depending on the type of product you sell and who you sell to. Like one thing that comes to mind right now in terms of expanding inside of existing accounts is who are the stakeholders that you're working with right now? And if you're stuck with some lower level stakeholders, what can you do to have some creative things that will help them get through the economy downturn that they would be interested in knowing about, that you can offer? And maybe that's even at a higher level of stakeholder or another group that might need a similar capability of what you have. So I really think everything's on the table as far as exploring net new, expand existing, keep what you have. There's a lot of moving parts there, but a lot of opportunities for sure.
So this means ratios can't work because your SE teams are going to be helping people disconnected from that historical direct, one to number ratio, because they're helping different parts of the company. So an understanding of the impact that they're bringing wherever they're bringing it becomes even more important then.
I think, Mark, what's important in that, the ratio is the output of the exercise and unique to the organization, one's organization. I think people start with a ratio and work their way backwards sometimes, but if
very often
all we're talking about are all the inputs that would determine how many SEs you need based on the value add across the business. And if they're supporting pre and post sales, that would impact the ratio. And I've been just as guilty of that, again, like starting with the ratio and working my way backwards to justify that ratio. But I think it's important.
I've tried it before as well. It didn't work.
Yeah, it's a lot easier, that's for sure.
Well, yeah. So we do have a question in the Q&A. I'm going to read it out. Thank you, Kintan. So speaking of rope scores, what are high-performing SE teams doing to increase the return on their effort, especially in the backdrop of AI? Who wants to take that one?
This is just real quick, and then I'll stop talking. I have actually been using ChatGPT for creating demo scripts, summaries of discovery calls, and churning out just some like basic like demo to win style demo roadmaps. And it's been pretty effective. It saved me a ton of time, and I'm encouraging my team to do it as well.
Very interesting.
And the same counts for. Yeah, sorry, Malcolm.
Sorry, I was just going to say, because I'm going to come possibly with a slightly less enthusiastic embracing of AI. And I'll preface it with this way. I've spent a lot of the last month or so explaining to my teenage children that the answers they're getting from the various AI tools that they're using need a little bit of scrutiny. And one last week where my daughter was very insistently pronouncing to me that the chatbot she was working with was giving her the right answer, and I was 3 for 3. It's like, give it this question, tell it, examine the answer it gives. A couple of them were matters of substance, one was matter of fact. And where I'm going with this, and it comes on, I think, from the point Art was making a little moment ago about win-loss. And where this is really interesting for us is, can we as an organization really truly answer the question, why are we winning and why are we losing? Because I can tell you, every organization, everybody on this call, if you go into your CRM and look at your win-loss data, I guarantee the number one reason you're losing is price, because that's what every salesperson puts into CRM. If price is an option, that's what they put. Much more interesting to me is, why are we winning? And what I found when we really go do win-loss reviews is the reasons we actually win and the reasons we think we win are often very, very different. And if I want to distill what great looks like, that's really where I'd start diving into this. And come back to the AI thing, that's my training data. I need really great training data to actually come up with good answers. And I will hold my own hands up here and say, I don't think I have great insight into, or deep enough insight into where we're winning and losing and why we're winning and losing. And most organizations, I think, can do a lot better on that as well. And it's a discipline that we don't do in the good times.
And how can AI help you with that? I mean, when you ask a salesperson or a pre-sales person or anybody within your company, they will come up with an answer that is most convenient for them, not pointing at themselves. When you ask the customer, the lost prospect, why did you choose for someone else? They will make it up because they don't know. It's not always a rational decision. So how can AI help you to analyze why you're winning or why you're losing? Because they can analyze how long the calls were, how many calls there were, how your website's been used, which videos have been reviewed, who you spoke to, perhaps. Are you seeing any value in that?
Yeah, you can absolutely extract from data that says, if we have this many, for some sales motions, there's definitely an optimum number of sales calls. Like, let's say it's between 4 and 6, and if we've only had 2 sales calls, 4 and 6 is the sweet spot, so that's not happening. If we've had 10 sales calls, the prospect is kicking the tires. So you can absolutely extract metrics like that to give you an umbrella view of a pipeline, and I think that is very, very valuable. Where I think there is work to go is actually unpicking what's going on underneath that. So at the next level of depth, what is it about the solutions that they like, or what are we actually selling to our ideal customer profile? That's a really interesting one. I've spoken to people. Our ideal customer is this. Yeah, but all your customers are, our sweet spot's 1,000 seat organizations. Yeah, all your customers have got 5,000 seats. But there's a disconnect there, and organizations often have that disconnect between what we think and what the reality is. So it's really diving into, and to answer your question, how do you do this, Natasja? Again, I've done this in the past. I actually, in the aftermath of the early 2000s, we had sales engineering did this, sales engineering management did this, actually go and do those win-loss reviews. And not the day after the prospect tells you, hey, you didn't win. A couple of weeks after, as part of our sales campaign, we said, whatever the outcome, good or bad, we will want to meet with you afterwards and have this conversation. And if you ask good questions, prospects, if they were genuinely buying, they, in my experience, will tell you where you didn't hit the mark. And sometimes it's your sales engagement, sometimes it's your product, sometimes it is price, just less often than the CRM says.
So I think it's important that people, you never go to a restaurant and then ask the chef to review how much you enjoyed your food. You review how much you enjoyed your food, and if the chef comes out and says, "Did you enjoy your food?" I reckon 99%, 100% of British people, if I may overgeneralize, because we never want to step out of line, but many people would just tell the chef yes. So I think it's very interesting when closed reports aren't done with the salesperson, they're done either by a separate company or disconnected in some way. In mindful of Kinson's question about AI, do we think that AI would be able to help create better performing SE teams by getting involved in that close process? or the win-loss process?
I think,
or what could you use
that-
AI for to
Yeah.
help make sure that your SE teams are delivering more than they otherwise would have done?
Yeah, and that's a very
Yeah,
general. You know, that
one of yeah.
I don't know if there's a delay here or if we're stepping on each other. So I was just going to say, I think finding companies that are incorporating AI properly, because Malcolm, to your point, I know I put some stuff in there about tell me about me, and it said I won these awards and I wrote 2 books, and the 2 books that it said I wrote don't even exist on the internet anywhere. Like, it totally made stuff up. So big caution on what to use, but find somebody, and again, consensus and all that logic that you have in your system to say what does resonate, when did they send this demo to another person, and correlate that back to your win-loss. That's huge. Find companies that are using the power of AI. I wouldn't want to just try it myself and figure out how I can make it work. But there's some tactical tools that could be used for sales. And Peter put in there about efficiency and effectiveness, which is a big theme for sales teams. So I know I just started using recently Otter AI, which is, and I'm not advertising it or anything. There's others out there like it. But the point is, it takes things like videos or other things like that, podcasts even. So Mark, I did this with some of your burning sales podcasts, and I put it into there and it transcribes it. And then that way I can word search on stuff, and I can get, glean insights. Like, it'll do a word cloud around certain types of things. So I did about a dozen or so burning sales podcasts, and I just had the Otter AI listen to it. And then it helps me to interpret it instead of me having to listen to the whole thing. Not that they're long, because they're very nice and concise.
Well, that sounds good. I'd like it. It probably does a great job of burning pre-sales. 2 pre-sales in a pod. I don't know what it would make of that. Perhaps we should try that.
And I believe AI and ChatGPT can be a great help in preparing discovery calls, because it can pull up a lot of information on the person that you are speaking to, not the individual per se, but the job title, the industry, the typical challenges, the pain points. And those are not that you, and this information can help you to prepare your questions, to prepare the route to get that person to acknowledge their pain point, to acknowledge their critical business issue, to share that with you, or to talk about value. It can pull up customer stories that you can use as examples of new technology. So I believe it's great, and especially for the international pre-sales in Europe, a lot of people have to speak in a different language than their mother tongue. Then AI can be a great tool to find the right wording in responding to an email or to answer an RFP, because your English isn't perfect. But if the AI tooling can help you with making that better, to write crisper, finding the synonyms, that's a great tool, and will reduce a lot of the, let's say, the manual work, the time consuming work, and make you more effective. Because yes, you need to check the outputs. It's not that it tells the truth, but with your knowledge, it's a great accelerator for what you know and how to convey that to other people in the world.
Yeah, I think some of the tools that are out there for grammar and style are actually quite useful. And if so, there are definitely tools out there that will, for example, tell you to rewrite in an active voice rather than a passive voice, or to be consistent with first person or third person styles. And on the hypothesis that active is more useful than passive voice, it doesn't matter what the hypothesis is. Whatever you decide to do, the tools can edit for you. I think there is definitely some good stuff out there.
Isn't there a whole panel discussion on AI at some point during the DEMOFEST? I think there was, right?
Well,
Peter,
I suggest people go and look through the whole lot.
Yeah.
I'll say we'll probably leave AI then just for a second, but we have had a Q&A about it. So I'll just move the conversation from there by bringing up the question, which is asking about, we know that AI can surface content responses. It's great perhaps for large amounts of RFP data and collating things from a data set in an interesting way. But the question is, but it does not replace the human relationship the SE brings to the pursuit strategy. And I'd like to think about that when we look at the human side of the team optimization in a down economy, and think about how to manage employee engagement and motivation. Because I think from a leadership perspective, if you're leading leaders, it's very different to leading ICs in terms of the amount of responsibility they have within their role. And so perhaps someone would like to come in on that, on how to motivate people when times are hard and there is mainly just bad news, but you need to keep things going and productive.
One quick suggestion I have, which is also a bit of a tactical thing I think that's actionable that anybody can do, is many SEs are quite well educated or gone through various trainings like Great Demo or John Care's Mastering Technical Sales, and etc. This might be a good time in terms of motivation to have them pull something out and maybe put together a key learning and share that with the team and even with their sales counterparts. So one of the things I know that I get as a Great Demo facilitator is it's strictly a group of SEs, they'll be like, oh, well, my sales team needs to know about this. All right, well, put together a little summary, of the key things and help them understand the way that they can interact with you better so that you can make use of that. So I think it's a way to give a stage, sort of, so to speak. We also know that typically you learn something best by actually teaching it to somebody else or informing them about it. So it's a great way to get your team to be elevated and be motivated as leaders in the organization.
The thing I'd like to add to boosting and increasing morale is have the eye on the individual, enable, talk to each other, talk more regularly to each other in a team meeting, in a one-on-one. Make sure that there's a culture where people can express how they feel, that it's safe, and maybe brainstorm together on how to improve that situation. But if it's not shared, if it's not open, if there's no communication, then people can feel really lonely in these times. So I believe it's important to have more communication than ever, in one-to-one, in the team, and potentially with a wider group. Every time when I speak, the camera stops. So sorry for that.
Well, that's quite okay. It's working for us. We can still hear you loud and clear. So not a problem. Perhaps the camera is like, oh, hang on a minute. I need to watch this bit. See, AI is taking over everything. It's now deciding. So in terms of the timing for the session, we've got about 8 minutes left. There's a couple of slides at the end that I'm going to be sharing with everybody. So I'd like to go around the room and focus on some actionable insights that people can take away today if they're really feeling the struggles, if they're really feeling the pain of a downturn in economy. Perhaps they've got the same, like you mentioned earlier, Malcolm, they've got the same targets. The shareholders still want the money, but people, at the moment aren't buying. And unless you take a very long-term view and you've got cash on reserve, your teams are going to be feeling under pressure. So what can leaders and ICs do to alleviate some of that pressure and make sure that the team works? Let's go around the room. I'm going to pick on Art to start us off, in no particular order, apart from the fact that you're at the front of my screen.
Sure. So I think it is about having an environment that allows for support, empathy, understanding of the situation, hearing things out from your team. And then I think it's really going to be an opportunity for sharpening the saw, right? When there's a downtime, reinvest in yourself, read a book, review your notes, practice your virtual sessions, get with your salesperson and go through some dry runs and things like that. And as leaders, I think that, sales leaders can support that. As individual contributors, that's something that you could pick up and do on your own. And that will help the entire team and allow you to develop that spirit of team effort, because it is a team sport. And that means we should all be working together better.
Excellent. Well, yes, indeed. Natasja.
I think you should always be, and one of the key points that we discussed in the beginning is about qualification and prioritization. Make sure that you're doing the right things. When there's a down economy, just don't run after every opportunity, but keep qualifying. So you have someone available when there is that must-win opportunity. Have a list of companies that you want to focus on. And if there's time left, then encourage the team to work together with other departments so that they can see the value add. That's the key points from the beginning. I believe that's the major takeaways from there.
Excellent. Malcolm.
A couple from me then. So as a leader, be intentional about having people communicate with each other. So make the connections either between your team. You know, Fred's struggling with thing X. Well, we know that Daphne's really good at that. Fred, go talk to Daphne. Make that happen, and be on the watch out for people who are shrinking back or become less visible. So be intentional about making those things happen. For individual contributors and leaders, I'd encourage you to make the individual contributors consider this. Go and look back at the stuff that's stagnant in the funnel, or the things that we lost a little while ago to no decision. And sometimes a sales engineer can reinvigorate those things that stalled in a better way than a salesperson can. So I'd encourage you to do that. We're doing that at the moment, actually, and it's working for us. We're seeing actual dollar improvements from having sales engineers ask the question, hey, how's that going, rather than the salesperson. So 2 things from me.
Nice. I can feel lots of people writing these down. Zach, let's give them something else to write down.
Sure. I mean, I think ultimately this is a great time to bring the rest of your organization along and orient around what's important for the company. If you don't have QBRs set up for your team or teams already, you should set those up. And they're a great opportunity to shine a light on what the company objectives are, what the mission for the organization is, what the mission and purpose for the SC organization is, and allow people to feel connected to the impact that they have as it relates to the business.
Well, there we go. We've got an absolute, some great choice snippets of actionable insights that people can take away. It's been you thought that the hour was going to go quickly. It has gone quickly, and I'm sure all of these subjects we would love to talk about more, and I'm sure we'll get the opportunity in terms of continuing the conversation. As you can see, you'll have all of our names. We're all on LinkedIn. You can send us a message on Discord. But other than that, I will probably wrap up the session. So I wanted to say thank you to all of the panelists, and I've got some information that I would like to share with you now. So I will do that, and we will go from there. So I'd like to remind everyone about our DEMOFEST game, where each session you attend and each session feedback survey you fill out gets you points to win some of our awesome prizes. We are very excited bringing DEMOFEST on the road again. We had a great time in San Francisco in March and can't wait to bring the event back to Dublin, London, and New York. You will definitely see me in London and New York. And Dublin, and London, and everywhere, hopefully. You can register for any of these events at demofest.com, which is also available in the link in the Docs tab on the right of your screen. I also encourage you to stop by our expo hall to visit our premier partners of DEMOFEST. Remember, there's no transfer of money involved in this event. So all our partners here have gone above and beyond to contribute to making this event a success for all of you. So thank you for joining us for this panel session, and thank you to our panelists for all of the valuable insights and knowledge, which has been very, very interesting to be part of, and I appreciate that. Thank you very much indeed. Up on the screen are the upcoming sessions, so you will be automatically pushed to the next session in your track, and you can switch tracks or sessions by toggling to the agenda tab at the top left of your screen. So we will see you soon. Thank you very much.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Goodbye.